Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This webinar is organized by the International Press Institute, which is a global media freedom organization based in Vienna. And we're organizing this in partners with the Media Freedom Rapid Response, which is a consortium of press and journalist groups across Europe. Jamie Wiseman, the EU Advocacy Officer at IPI. And it's been just under 2 weeks now since the Fidesz party of Viktor Orbán, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, introduced a bill to Parliament labeled the Transparency of Public Life, which offers the Hungarian government sweeping new powers to crack down on independent media and civil society, and represents the most serious attack on press freedom in many years. In that time, condemnations have been swift. We've seen a number of responses from Hungarian civil society and media, as well as international press freedom and human rights organizations, EU politicians, MEPs and lawmakers, and most recently the EU Commission itself, as well as protests on the street of Budapest. And tomorrow, the EU Council is due to debate the rule of law in Hungary, during which I'm sure this bill on foreign funding and transparency will be front and center. So ahead of the EU session, and to kind of to cut through the noise a little bit, we've organized this webinar to bring together leading Hungarian journalists and media experts to kind of give their assessment of the bill, raise their concerns and concerns of other colleagues, also to kind of contextualize the bill a little bit within what's now more than a decade-long crackdown on independent journalism, and also to hear what their expectations are from the EU to this latest kind of authoritarian attack on democracy. So to do so, I'm really pleased to be joined by 4 leading Hungarian journalists and media experts. Firstly, we have Eva Bogner, the coordinating director of Media Forum, which is an association of independent Hungarian media outlets. Also today we have András Peto, the executive director of Direct 36, a leading investigative media in Hungary. Marton Karvati, the CEO of Telex, one of the largest independent online media in Hungary, and Veronica Monk, a long-time journalist and editor in Hungarian media, and now the director of innovation and new markets at the leading independent media, then again in Slovakia. So thank you for joining us. We'll keep this session to around 1 hour long, with around 5 to 10 minutes at the end for questions. So through the webinar, please do feel free to post your questions into the chat, and at the end, you can click the little button to raise your hand, and if you have a question you'd like to ask on screen to the panelists, we can certainly do that. But without any further ado, Eva, I'll turn to you first. I have a sense that a lot of people who are joining will have a general understanding of the law so far, will have read a little bit in media reports or statements. But yeah, let's take a deep dive into exactly what the provisions are and from your perspective, just how serious they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much for organizing this event, and thank you for joining us. I have a few slides. I'm going to be quick, I promise. So a little bit of context. I know this is something that you will be talking about, so really just a snapshot of the long backsliding that's been happening in Hungary since 2010, the elimination of checks and balances. We experienced a highly shrinking space for dissent and an extremely high level of media capture. Again, these are things that my colleagues can also talk about. As we all know, Trump's entry into office in January have changed the landscape, the international landscape, massively for the governing parties. Again, something that we can discuss later. And just to give you the most recent context, we are holding elections in less than a year. The economy is in a terrible shape, and there is a discontent with the state, with the government. And it seems like, according to polls, which are sort of reliable, Fidesz started losing its popularity, and there's a new opposition that's emerging. This all gives some context to the setting up of the so-called Sovereignty Protection Office, which has been around for over a year and a half, slowly. And so far, they have been part of the propaganda machine, but they didn't have sanctioning powers. And this new bill is finally giving them sweeping powers to act on their so-called investigations into independent civil society organizations and media outlets. Now, we have experienced an intensified campaign against so-called foreign-funded independent media and NGOs, which probably culminated in Viktor Orbán, Prime Minister Orbán's speech, where he called for an Eastern cleanup and called independent entities and actors bugs that are to be wiped out. Now, focusing on the bill, it was introduced. It's hard to believe that it hasn't been 2 weeks yet. On the 13th of May, by an individual member of parliament of Fidesz, János Halász. It's called on transparency in the public sphere. Of course, this has nothing to do with transparency, as we all know. And the bottom line is that it severely restricts organizations receiving funding from abroad by blacklisting them. Now, the point of the bill is that it creates a blacklist, and those organizations that are put on the blacklist will experience serious restrictions, as I said. Now, who is put on the list? How do you get on this blacklist? And this is where the Sovereignty Protection Office comes in. They are the ones who decide if an organization receives foreign funding and if it is considered a threat to Hungary's sovereignty. And both of these things I will tell you more about. It can propose, the Sovereignty Protection Office can propose that the government put that organization on a list by a decree. It's a completely arbitrary process, as you see. Foreign funding is considered as any funding coming from outside Hungary. It means that EU funding is included in foreign funding, and that any small donation from private individuals, if they're coming from outside Hungary, are included in this. The other criterion, sovereignty threat, is also extremely broad and on purpose. Any activity that is financed by a foreign funding, that is from foreign funding, that harms or portrays in a negative light the following values, is considered a threat. So we have in the fundamental law, we have certain values listed, and these are the ones that the Hungarian government chose as protected by this law. So if you harm these values in any way or portray them in a negative light, then you are considered a threat to national sovereignty. If you criticize Hungary's democratic system, then you could be found as a threat. If you talk about the peace and security and cooperation with other countries, partnerships with other countries, then again, you could be considered a threat. Specifically, and probably most importantly, to civil society and to media activities capable of influencing public opinion or influencing the will of voters or a democratic debate are considered in this category. What are the consequences if you're listed? So based on the previous slide, based on those criteria, you might be listed if the Sovereignty Protection Office decides so. Once you're on the list, then you experience the following restrictions. You may only receive funding, foreign funding, with the permission of an anti-money laundering authority, basically the tax authority. you lose the eligibility to receive 1% tax donations from citizens, Hungarian citizens. This is a significant blow to civil society and media organizations, as Matt and I'm sure we'll talk about this. This is a major source of income. There will be a requirement to obtain official documents from all donors, certifying that the funds they're donating do not originate from abroad. Again, this is major. Senior officers, founders, and oversight committee members will have to declare their assets, and they will be classified as so-called politically exposed persons, like the Prime Minister of Hungary or the President of Hungary or members of the Hungarian Parliament. There are again, the processes are also quite worrisome that are employed here. They're using basically the anti-money laundering legal and technical system, and they employ this for this purpose. It means that financial institutions will be required to monitor the financial activities of the organizations that are on the list, meaning if they see a transfer that is from abroad, then they are to stop this from happening. And first, they have to report it to the anti-money laundering authority, which examines them. And then the transfer, which will be allowed if it's not aiming to influence public life. If it is found that the foreign funding that it's aiming to influence public life, it will be transferred back to the donor. Now, those organizations that are found accepting foreign funding without the permission, then they would face severe consequences, including on-site inspections, where their documents, data storage devices might be confiscated and copied, examined by the authorities, including the police if necessary. They will be fined for 25 times the amount they received, 25 times the amount. And also they face potential dissolution if they again accept foreign funding without permission. This agency, the anti-money laundering agency, will cooperate with multiple state institutions and financial institutions. And in the process, there's no real meaningful remedy against its decisions. Now, the timeline is incredibly tight. As I said, the proposal was introduced on May 13th. There has already been a discussion in Parliament that happened on May 20th, and the vote is happening between the 10th and 12th of June. And within 3 days, the restrictions will take effect, meaning the lists will be live and those organizations that are on the list will start experiencing the restrictions that I've introduced. This is what I wanted to say as an introduction. And of course, if you have any specific questions, then I'm happy to answer questions. And of course, my colleagues are more than equipped to complement what I said already. Thank you.
Eva. Yeah, no, thanks for that really concise kind of overview and introduction. Just to follow up with one question myself, I mean, I think maybe it was the same for you, but when we saw the bill, at least obviously we had to translate it, but the more we read, the more alarming it became as you see each of the different provisions kind of laying out. As you said, there's an incredibly broad definition of what can constitute a threat to Hungarian sovereignty. It encapsulates all donations and funding, even as low as €5. I think, like you said, it's moving incredibly quickly, and at least from IPI's perspective, was even more restrictive than we thought it may well be. but so much rests on this body that kind of was oversee the law. You mentioned it's the Sovereignty Protection Office. It was already set up in December 2023, and this body will really play the key role. So what do we know already about how this institution has been operating since its founding? Its management and its policies towards independent media.
What we have seen so far is quite alarming. They are acting like the fist of the government. They completely fall in line with the propaganda of calling journalists foreign agents and spies. Absolutely mixing up, confusing journalism and espionage. Basically, they have they're spreading blatant lies in some cases about these organizations that are not just media organizations but also civil society organizations, and potentially even businesses could fall under this law, by the way. So what we have seen so far is incredibly alarming. They are operating with an enormous budget, with over 100 employees so far, and they lack transparency, which is quite ironic, that they're supposedly fighting for a transparent public sphere, but they don't respond to journalists' requests themselves. And so yes, so what we have seen so far is a huge alarm. I don't know if the journalists on the panel would like to comment further on the operations of the Sovereignty Protection Office. They launched so-called investigations that are basically conspiracy theories, and then publicize those as reports and investigations.
And maybe worth mentioning that the head of this office actively encouraged Hungarian people not to contribute financially to independent media organizations, many of them collecting donations or subscriptions, and he actively called out to people and saying not to pay for these organizations for independent media on the communicational level.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it's already kind of illustrative of a discriminatory approach then. And I understand that obviously this would be a kind of complementary bill that would strengthen the powers of the Sovereignty Protection Office. And as well, I think there'd been reports in Hungarian media that the intelligence services had been tasked with helping to at least do a kind of initial compilation or to information gathering. Is there any update on the scope of that and whether those kind of investigations have been carried out?
Anders, maybe do you know about the details of those cases?
No, actually, no, I don't. We don't. I mean, that's the nature of these activities, of course, these operations, that we don't really know their details. But I mean, ever since the secret services came under the supervision of Viktor Orbán's chief of cabinet, I think it's it's probably the political aspect of these operations become even stronger than before. And even before, we of course, some may remember the Pegasus surveillance abuses that were revealed a couple of years ago, and we learned that several Hungarian journalists, including two of my colleagues, were also targeted.
Also, Átlátszó, watchdog Átlátszó, put in a public information request to find out how the Sovereignty Protection Office cooperates with other authorities and offices, state and public offices. And it turned out that they requested cooperation from other agencies and other offices, some of which it seems like did indeed cooperate with them, and some refused to cooperate. We don't know much yet. As I said, they are very non-transparent in their operations, but we know that they are cooperating with some of these other agencies.
Okay, thanks, Eva and Andras. And I mean, you mentioned as well that the National Tax Authority and banks will also be obliged to assist in enforcing the rules as well, kind of widening the scope even further. Okay, good. After we've kind of introduced the bill and picked out a couple of its most alarming provisions, Martin, I'd like to turn to you next just to talk about the impact that this would have. I mean, you can talk about your own media outlet, the media landscape more generally, about just how damaging this could be if passed.
Well, hi everyone, and thanks for the opportunity and the invitation. You could probably see yourselves how harmful and hostile this proposal is going to be. The biggest problem is that it's literally impossible to comply with this law or proposal. I mean, the sanctions can be put on basically everyone for everything, and anyone can be blamed at any time for just doing their jobs, which is kind of an absurd nonsense happening in an EU state. We were just talking about this Sovereignty Protection Office, and let me remind everyone that when this office stood up, before this office stood up, everyone denied that it had anything to do with free press. They were just talking about political parties, politicians who receive donations from abroad. They might be the only ones who were affected. And once it stood up, the next day the Prime Minister said, come on, it's obvious it's for the press too. And now they're making this again, that they keep telling to the public that, oh, there's nothing to worry, it's just about transparency, it's just about protecting the sovereignty of the country. But it's not true. The government politicians already told that this law will be affected at certain news outlets, telex is included, so they already told that, oh, this will affect you. There are no examinations yet, there are no reports yet. The other problematic part of this proposal is that once this office decides who should be put on a blacklist, there's no right to do anything against it. We cannot go on court. We cannot see why we are on the list. We don't know how we can get off the list. I mean, not us, it's for everyone. So they want to make transparency, but their operation and this whole law is just totally untransparent. There's nothing, you cannot see how they decide. There's no legal rights to go against it. You cannot go to court. This is like a total nonsense. I mean, and the sanctions are even more strict to like, let's say, journalists or editor-in-chiefs or publishing company owners than, let's say, for the tax authorities leader. I mean, we have to be more transparent, and it's okay. We are totally transparent. We have transparency reports. Everything they are attacking us with are known from our reports. We are proud of our operations, our grants, our revenues, and so this is just this is just nonsense. And talking about our operations. on a yearly basis, we have less than 10% coming from foreign funds or foreign vendors. Most of these grants come from EU organizations or EU member organizations, totally legal, totally transparent, totally. I mean, there's nothing. It's just lawful, legal, and transparent. And now they are saying that these are being prohibited because they are dangerous to the country's sovereignty, which is absurd and nonsense again. Just think of it that, okay, you can get money from the EU to construct roads or to rebuild places in a town or in a city, but the free media, the free press cannot get those funds. I mean, come on, what's the difference? I mean, you can even influence the voters' behavior by reconstructing roads from EU funds. So it's we don't really see a difference, and of course this will have impact on us as well. We just looking what kind of grants we have to suspend. There's this another crazy idea that we cannot get any funds from abroad, let's say from readers, which is like, again, a total nonsense and bizarre thing. So we have to just rethink and reconstruct our operations, and it's not just for us. It's as I said at the beginning, it's basically for everyone, because anyone can be blamed for anything. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. This is crazy, and we just. One day I wake up and think that, okay, this is so terrible, and then how could this happen? And the other day I wake up and I think that, okay, this cannot happen, this cannot go through, this is so absurd, and the people who will vote on this exactly know that this is against all EU laws, this is against our own constitutions, this is against many of Hungarian national laws as well, and yet they are still pushing it. So,
thanks, Martin. Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Antonina Chedovko about is it whether it's possible to appeal the decision if you're included on this list. And you mentioned that there's no transparency in the first place. There's no criteria, explanation. So yeah,
I know, and there's another important thing, that once you are being sanctioned, the law says that you can go to court, and the court can do this process of trialing and seeing that how this decision was made. But it's written in the law that whatever the court decides, it cannot overrule the decision that you are being sanctioned of. I mean, you can go to court, but the court can do nothing. It can only say, oh, that was a bad thing, thank you.
Yeah, it's a crazy situation, and you describe, Martin, the thought process that a lot of decisions that a lot of media in Hungary which receive any form of foreign grant are going to have to think about. And one is either to suspend all grants, stop applying for EU projects, maybe cancel the donations or subscriptions from readers abroad. I mean, there's a lot of hoops to jump through there. The other, of course, is we understand that some Hungarian media are already considering relocating outside of the country, or at least re-registering their legal entity in the neighboring country. I mean, this would lead to potentially the first kind of exiled journalist community from one EU member state to another, which would, I mean, put us in an entirely new kind of world of EU journalism. Do you think this is a kind of, yeah, could we be looking at this picture in the coming months and years?
Yeah, it might happen. I mean, I think everyone is just thinking, okay, how can we operate once they adopt this law? And as I said at the beginning, it's impossible to comply with this law. I mean, if I wanted to comply, I would not be able, because there are like this pretty wide um, um, so it's like too wide. You can be blamed for anything at any time, and the sanctions are the toughest you could imagine. Okay, it's it's not it's not about going to jail, but at the end it could be that as well. So this is just too tough, and once again, it's not about we don't oppose this law because we don't like to be transparent. We are totally transparent. This law is not about transparency, because, as I told you, the operation of this office is not transparent at all. The decision making of this office is not transparent at all. We are an open book. We all our numbers, all our revenues, all our grants are transparent. So what's the need for this law then?
Yeah, whatever, there are a number of independent Hungarian media outlets which, if you click on their website, everything is there about their finances.
Yeah.
Preemptively in recent years, people seeing this attack coming, and there's already a pretty high level of transparency across the sector. You mentioned, of course, that this is not going to lead to journalists going to jail, but I think the most severe penalty can be the closure of a media outlet, right? If you
Yeah.
accept a grant, they put you on the list and blacklist you, ban you, and you continue to do it a second time, there's legal grounds to close media outlets. Yeah.
Just one quick addition. There are more than hundreds of us working at Telex. I don't know if the audience knows Telex was born 5 years ago because we used to work at Hungary's biggest news site, and there were some political backed movements in the board of the publishing company. The government or pro-government oligarchs tried to intervene and tell us how to operate, how to work, who to work with, who not to work with. So we all stood up in one day. And now I have to think. I'm not this kind of guy. I'm not this type. I think myself as a fighter, and I will fight against all this madness. But there are lots of colleagues who just mentally couldn't process the exodus from our from our previous workplace, and now it's happening again. And they have this in mind that, okay, what is going wrong? We are just doing our job, and this is. There are many colleagues for whom it's not the first or the second time they are hit by the power or the government. Many steps before, and now it's coming again, and I can sense on lots of my colleagues that they are just too tired of it. They're just doing their job, which is guarded and granted in the constitutions, and they see and feel that they are coming after us whatever we do. Too sad.
Thanks, Martin. There's a question in there about the role of the EU, which we'll definitely come to just towards the end. It's a huge question, I think. Andras, I'd like to come to you now, and Martin was kind of describing the trend in recent years is that there's been such a long campaign to kind of erode media pluralism in Hungary now. There's been a number of independent outlets that were taken over by business interests with links to the ruling party and political interests that were then flipped and turned into propaganda outlets. And this general sense that the space for independent journalism was continuously shrinking. But it appeared that there was this kind of safe bubble of independent media which could rely on grants from outside, tax donations in the 1%, and kind of digital advertising and donation and subscription models. There was always some relative safety in this shrunken space. And now it would appear, like Martin says, that even this space is under attack. What is your sense of this bill, how damaging it would be, and how it fits into this wider multi-year campaign?
Well, I think we are paying a price for being too successful, basically, because what happened, the last 15 years in Hungary. Yes, it has been a story of this systemic crackdown on independent media, and a lot of outlets were shut down or have been taken over. But actually, as Martin explained, the story of Telex, that how they left their previous outlet and they set up a new organization that is, full disclosure, we are publishing partners, but they have built a really successful and popular news website. But that's the story of basically every other independent outlets in Hungary. Direct 36 was born. We started it 10 years ago after we had left and formerly independent news website that came under attack from the government. And I think in the last 4 or 5 years, especially, showed that this independent media scene is really resilient. There is a lot of innovation, and actually, I think the public has been realizing more and more that we are serving them. We are telling true stories, and while the government has been, trying to sell them lies through their really big and robust propaganda machinery. And when the government has seen, how last year the pro-Orbán president had to resign because of a scandal that was broken by the press. It started by 444, and then others joined in. Or when they saw, just to mention one of our own examples, that when we produced a documentary about the Orbán family's businesses, and we released it in February, and now it has more than 3.6 million views on YouTube. In a country of less than 10 million, that's a huge number. So I think basically this bill was born out of frustration by the government, that they spent years trying to silence and eliminate independent media in this country, but we found our ways and we were innovative, and then we built these financial models as well, which was, yes, it was built mainly on reader revenue or viewer revenue, also on the 1% tax donations. And yes, we also accepted, we were applying for grants from foreign foundations. And if you look at this bill, I mean, I don't know, I've also talked to lawyers, and then basically they are telling us that this is not a piece of legislation. This is a threat. This is not a legal document per se. So if you look at it, basically they are trying to cut off every possible revenue stream that you have, these outlets, the remaining independent outlets have in Hungary.
Thanks, Antosh. And yeah, I see the question was answered about when the bill will be voted on. Andras, I mean, yeah, you could have spoke about the threat to journalism, but of course, civil society more widely in Hungary are very much under threat as well. Of course, we focus on journalism here, but for the wider kind of democratic fabric of Hungary, it's a serious threat as well. Of course, this is coming ahead of the election next year. So maybe if you could speak just a little bit about the wider political context as well and how this fits in.
Yes, I think Eva also mentioned at the beginning that how the government is in a quite big trouble politically, because the the economy is not working well, their messaging are not really resonate, their messages are not really resonating with the public, and there is a new political situation in which they are on the defensive, and they've been on the defensive for many months now. And I've heard theories or interpretations that this whole bill is just is actually is to hijack the public discourse. And it's true in the short term, like in the last 12 days or 13 days, actually, we spent a lot of time focusing on this bill, and we spent less time on talking about the economy, on inflation, on the bad, some of the bad decisions that the government has made. So yes, maybe it serves also that goal. But of course, again, the independent media has shown that it still matters, especially in this kind of environment that the Hungarian government has created. So I think, yes, they are trying to weaken us, they're trying to distract us, because they don't want us to focus on what actually matters for the Hungarian public. I mean, I guess I can say on behalf of most or probably all independent outlets that, of course, we know what our job is, which is to tell, we serve the public and tell important stories.
Thanks, Anders. Maybe there's a question in the chat about that even for Orbán it seems like overreach, this bill, and does it suggest that you're desperate? And there's a question of whether there's sign of public protest. Maybe that's a good kind of segue to come to you next, Veronica, just to talk about what's the response been so far, both in Hungary and externally. I know you coordinated a joint statement signed by nearly 100 editors from around Europe. So what's the general sense, and have there been protests, in Budapest as well?
So when the proposal was introduced a little less than 2 weeks ago, there was a protest, but since then we haven't seen like huge masses on the streets of Budapest, which is unfortunately, it's quite we used to that. So Hungarians, it's really hard to go out to the streets and say no in situations. But my assumption is that as soon as the law will be implemented, or when the vote's gonna happen in Parliament, my colleagues already said that it's around the 10th or the 12th of June it's gonna happen. Then that's my assumption that there might be a bigger reaction from the public, because now everybody is waiting. Everybody has, that's my hypothesis, this optimistic, like little bit of belief that maybe it's like the text itself gonna be like modified, or maybe it's not like implemented. I don't believe that. I believe it's gonna happen. I believe it will be really, really harsh. And I believe what my colleagues just said before me, that it's not a legislation, it's more like a pistol, more like a gun, which is already keeping head to the outlets, waiting for shut them down. Or it's like a continuous threat over their heads, in a very hostile media environment, when every organization is trying to keep their heads above the water financially and having many kind of pressures already. And this is an additional one. And yeah, I coordinated this international solidarity statement, because I had basically two aims. One aim was this very basic journalistic urge that I wanted to inform the public outside of Hungary as much as possible, because I haven't seen that much coverage after the law was introduced on the 13th of May. And I have this extended network internationally, so I asked as many editors-in-chief and publishers as possible to sign this statement, which basically calls out the EU to observe and maybe to act on the situation. And my other aim was that I'm Hungarian. I used to work for the Hungarian market for more than 20 years. I launched Telex together with Marton 5 years ago, and I had this sense that I wanted to do something like a solidarity to the colleagues from the outside. Guardian, the French Libération, Polish Gazeta Wyborcza, Zeit, so many organizations, many big organizations covered the law proposal by it. So what I sense now that the world already observed what's happening, and people knows about it. And also thank you for organizing webinars like this, because people will have more deep dive knowledge about this, I think, horrific, horrible proposal that even for Orbán, that one of the commenters say even like an overreach, but it is happening in Hungary.
Thanks, Veronica. I was reading about the bill and the protest that happened last week in Budapest, and the photo of the article was the protest and an EU flag, and in the middle it just said "help." What are the expectations, Veronica? The question to you, from the Hungarian media community to the EU at this time. We have the EU Council debate tomorrow, where EU leaders, of course, will debate rule of law, potentially Article 7, interim procedures, but what expectations are there to the international scene?
Actually, the EU is able to propose this formal infringement procedure, which was already started when in December 2023 the Sovereignty Protection Act was implemented. So there is already an ongoing formal infringement procedure against Hungary for basically harming all of the EU legislation. So they can start one more, or they can somehow connect these two procedures in one. But the sad thing is that even if they do that, it's like years, at least long months, but maybe years, until these procedures are going through and like something real intervention would be able to happen, which means until then, if this with this transparency law would be implemented and would be operated, then, and if the real intention is to silence critical voices in Hungary, as we assume, they would be successful before the EU procedures would be able to do anything actual activities. So they could frozen up bank accounts, they could go there to Direct 36, to Telex, or to any other independent media organizations with the police, and they could search them and they could secure their computers, etc. So EU would not be able to stop these kind of activities in a very short period of time.
And to the others on the panel, yes, Martin, yeah.
Yeah, just to show you another example how absurd this situation is. We are members of the EU, but if I had said that to the EU, to any EU organizations that, okay, this is happening at us, and then please look at the situation and please help us, then I could be labeled as an enemy of the country, as an enemy to the sovereignty of the country, and I could go on the list just saying that, okay, come on, EU, let's say, European Commission, please look at this legislation they are planning to adopt. Is it okay? And I can be labeled just saying that, okay, have a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is absurd, and I think it was, yeah, Georgia obviously passed a similar law amongst a lot of uproar, both at home and in Brussels as well, and that was, a key element in scuttling or derailing the country's chances of joining the EU. But of course, Hungary is already an EU member state. Do you get the sense that we've reached an inflection point now in terms of the democratic attacks? Is this one step too far, or yeah? Any takes on that?
We had that sense so many times before already. Yeah, we are laughing on it, all of the Hungarians in this call, but that's the truth. So there is always a new low, and yeah, it's not funny at all. And for me, it is more alarming than any of the former ones before. I would even say to my friends that maybe this could be like one step towards Hungary leaving the EU, or so for me it's like a real new worth, if that's possible to say it.
I think the big difference between the previous attacks and the crackdown on the independent media in Hungary is that, I mean, previously we had to pay we still had to pay a price for doing what we are doing. It was mostly, you had to endure the propaganda attacks on you, and that you are being called a foreign agent or a traitor to your country, which is not a pleasant thing to to live with. But it's something that you can live with, you can get used to it. But right now, basically they are attacking the pillars of your operations. But also, when it, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, thank God, not an EU expert either. But basically this is not only attacking the free media or the free press, but this is basically it goes against one of the most basic foundational values of the EU, which is the free movement of capital. So, I mean, if the EU, I mean, I don't know. I know it's it's also a community of leaders and countries. But if if this can survive, if this can happen in the EU, then I think you can all ask yourselves, like, what's the point of the EU? Because this basically goes against that very basic, and it's not even about the media. It's about the core of the EU, which was, it started as a commercial community.
Yeah, there's a slightly kind of interconnected question there in the chat, and two different questions. One asks, what it seems like this is aimed, at civil society and media. They wanted to ask how it would affect potentially private companies. And then the most recent question is that, given the wide provisions, do you think the international investments in Hungarian business, again, unrelated to media or civil society, could be caught up in the draft bill? And if so, are there opportunities to form alliances with wider groups to oppose the bill from within? I don't know if anyone would like to take that one.
So basically, any kind of organizations which would operate by the narratives that Eva showed in the beginning of the webinar, which is like a super broad kind of activities, or if that company or that business somehow related to any kind of public issues, then the organization would be able to be blacklisted with foreign funds, with these two conditions, like getting foreign funds. But it's a funny term, because even if you have YouTube advertisement or Google ads, or you receive donation through PayPal or Donably or Patreon, that also could be considered as foreign funds. But the answer is they don't. The proposal doesn't mention media or NGOs, but it talks about organizations, which could apply for basically any kind of organizations in Hungary. But maybe Eva would have a more precise explanation.
No, I fully agree that it is probably intentional that it's left very broadly, and also the fact that the banks are to monitor transactions, that's also a huge concern. It's a huge concern for banks because it is obviously a lot of labor. It's just capacity. It's a concern from a different angle that these organizations may not be able to have bank accounts if banks decide that it's just too much hassle to have their bank accounts at their institutions. So that is also a concern. But we've already seen reporting on financial and business entities deciding that Hungary is just a too risky, too troublesome environment for them, and that capital is considering leaving Hungary as a result, as a direct result of this bill, because, as I say, this opens up the possibility of financial transactions being monitored. And that's something that a lot of businesses are not comfortable with, as you can imagine. But it's gonna be difficult to show. And more generally speaking, we've already talked about how a lot about how an uncertain environment is bad for business, and it certainly is the case. But since we haven't seen businesses directly standing up against the government, this hasn't been a very effective resistance at all. But we'll see what's going to happen next.
Thanks, Eva. We're just coming into the last few minutes now, so I think it's easy to talk about the details and the EU level, but on the fundamental case is this really is one of the most serious and threatening attacks in many years against independent journalism and press freedom in Hungary. I think it was Veronica. You mentioned, we've been here before. There's been threats, and Hungarian journalism has been resilient. We'll have to see whether in this new environment, media can continue to adapt. But maybe we can end by I'd like to ask you each to kind of end with a key message, conclusion, or reflection just on this bill, about your take on it. I don't know who wants to go first.
So I can just say it again, that this is absurd. This is nonsense, and we don't have too much equipment or weapons to fight against this nonsense. But we will do everything, and we will just not accept cutting our heads off. We will just not accept from politicians gone rogue saying what the freedom of press is. We just won't accept that we could be blacklisted for doing our jobs, which, I'll say it again, granted in the Constitution. So we will just fight with own equipment or weapons or legal or any kind of techniques.
I can continue because I have a bit of a hopeful message as well. And it is that we've just conducted media forum with 21 Kutatókos Pont and Direct 36. We've conducted a small poll, which was done before this bill was proposed. And we were wondering if what the Hungarian public thought of media financing and this foreign funding and media independence in general. And our results are out. And the line of hope is that 61% of the respondents didn't agree with the statement that foreign funding is unacceptable for media organizations. They actually believe that there's nothing wrong with foreign funding in general. So our results are out in Hungarian, and I'm preparing the English version soon. So check out our website, mediaforum.hu, for the results. And one more message. It's very important for these organizations to stand together. This is why these statements of solidarity mean so much, especially for smaller outlets that are less visible, but probably way more vulnerable than the big national ones. So local journalism or smaller outlets that are working on issues, they are the most vulnerable, and they need to be like included in these movements of solidarity, and these are extremely important. And thank you for the international solidarity. It means a lot.
Thanks, Eva. Veronica and Josh, I know you have to jump off soon, but maybe you have a final message.
Yeah, so my message would be that everybody who is attending this webinar and is able to give a voice to their audiences or to their networks or to their colleagues about this proposal and about this threat and harm that's happening in Hungary against NGOs and free media actors. Just give a voice and inform people, and because I strongly believe that if there is a critical mass that knows about it and like talk about it, then yeah, we talked about the limitations of what EU can do in a situation like this. But if there is no buzz and there is no voice around this, that's a more harmful outcome.
Well, the only thing I would like to say is that if the government's goal was to intimidate the public, and they want to prevent them from supporting independent media, then I think they miscalculated. In the last 2 weeks, I haven't received a single email from our supporters who wanted to cancel their membership. In fact, the opposite happened. We saw an increase in our membership, and I'm pretty sure that's what happened with the most other independent outlets as well. So I think the public, a lot of people in Hungary, maybe they don't go to the street to protest. Yeah, Hungarians are not like that, but I think they show their support in different ways.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think the Hungarian journalistic community has been incredibly resilient over the years and will continue to be. And I'd just maybe finish, echoing Veronica's call. I think you can see a number of different colleagues who are joining from different international organizations and really pushing this issue as much as possible front and center there. And as many international fora as we can will be really important moving forward. So yeah, we're a few minutes over. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for joining us. If you would like to reach out to any of the colleagues who are the panelists, I'm going to put my email in the chat just now if you'd like to speak to them about how you can support Hungarian journalism, or yeah, any interviews, anything like that. So thank you on behalf of the International Press Institute, the Media Freedom Rapid Response as well. We'll be it's been recorded, the webinar, and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel so it can be shared afterwards as well. Thank you very much, and yeah, see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.